Hey there, it's Nat. I wanted to do a video today about what it takes to speak spontaneously well. And by spontaneously, some people might interchange that word for intuitively. But just to clarify what I mean, it's like if you were to ask someone to get up and speak for 5 minutes and you give them a topic that's something they know about and you ask them to just speak on it for 5 minutes and they get up there, they just do a beautiful job of it. It makes a huge amount of sense. And you're like, wow, they really know their stuff. That's what we're talking about, right? In the way that people like world renowned speakers like Brené Brown say that, she doesn't prepare that much. She's like, I just get up there and I do it and it flows through me. I have been working on a 5-step process model that I think kind of explains the process of what we go through to get to the point where we can speak spontaneously really well like that. And it's actually like a little bit more complex than it looks, because when somebody says that, I think we can get this kind of perception that, oh, if it's that easy, I can just get up and do it. But it doesn't always feel that easy when you do it. So I thought I'd just explain a little bit about the model first and take you through the stages, and then maybe give you a little practice and a process at the end that you can do to get some practice at speaking spontaneously in a safe environment where there's no pressure and no need for outcomes before you ever take it back to a professional space. Make sense? So first, where I share this with, I'll put a picture of the model so you can see what I'm talking about, first and foremost too, right? But like the first phase of this, or the first experience that we kind of have of this, I think many people from school, for example, have had an experience where you had to get up and speak. Sometimes you might have pre-prepared with cards. Sometimes you might have just avoided it as long as you could, and you got up and then you kind of ad-libbed, right? Or blah-blahed. And depending on how much you knew about the subject, kind of depends on how much you kind of either ad-lib and get it out or kind of blah-blah a bit, right? So that's the first phase, is we're not necessarily very intentional or practiced around that, and we're just kind of seeing what comes out. Sometimes it feels good, sometimes we're like, oh geez, that was crap. Maybe I should practice next time. So that's the first one, right? To get to the next one, we've kind of got to attune and set an intention around where we want to get to a little bit sooner in the piece. And then what's going on when we don't know, when we kind of bumbled our way through it. The second phase in the model is like the download phase. I can interchange the word download with exploration or discovery, depending on what modality or profession that you're from. But basically it's the phase where your mind hasn't fully made sense of everything that you know yet. You haven't yet categorized it or conceptualized it. You're raw, live in the moment where you're experiencing it for the first time. So for some of us, when that's just making sense of our inner world, that might be us just trying to work out what's going on for us for the process. Possibly publicly doing it on Facebook, on the Facebook journal of, doing a post that way. Or maybe it's, for an artist, it's doing a creative piece. For a researcher, it's the discovery phase. Like, say, Brené Brown, for example, like at some point she had to set a research question and go out and ask a bunch of people a bunch of questions about it. So the download phase, it's like, it's kind of raw, it's unknown, and you're about to learn a whole bunch, you're about to experience it for the first time, yeah? So that you can then do a little review to then take you into the next phase, which is the clarity phase. It's the phase where we kind of make some sense of what's going on and try and create some context, put it into a form that kind of makes sense and we could communicate clearly to the rest of the world. Yeah? That's what that bit's about. And that sort of, when we take that to the external world, that kind of has a bit where we need to sort of go to other people and see how it lands with them, and or refine it maybe a little bit as well within that as we take it to the world and just see, is that the best way to communicate it, or is there a slightly better way to do that? Over the length of our career, for example, as we do more of this knowledge is getting deeper all the time, right? We're accumulating more knowledge, we're accumulating more structure about it. So once you've got that piece of knowledge in the clarity phase, then we start to ask that question around, so how can I take this to the world in a form that's going to be useful? Yeah? So then it's like, then the service phase comes in, the intending around how you're going to be of service. And part of that is the taking it to an external audience to just see how it lands, but part of it's also, this is the phase where you might see some facilitators or speakers, sometimes they'll run spaces where they'll tell you that there's a very clear intention for them of, they know that they want to be of service, and then there's an attuning into the audience to see what the audience actually needs from them live in the moment relative to whatever they thought beforehand they may deliver. Yeah? So there's a whole stage within that that's just around being of service. And this is where we come back to, see, for some people, when we talk about speaking spontaneously or intuitively well, what they're really meaning is about, they want to know how to tune in to other people better and be able to be more aware when they're communicating with others, and then be able to use their sensory intelligence and the wider range of their faculties to be able to communicate better, right? So that's kind of, once you're in a group space, what it takes to get to a space where you're doing a dance with the audience really well. To get to the final ultimate stage of evolution within this, after all that feedback loop and a lifetime of practice, you get to the phase where you see the Brenets of the world, where their knowledge is, we used to talk about this all the time when I was being taught to mentor and mentoring, like the metaphor of inch wide and a mile deep. Like, for someone like Brené, she's been doing this for a couple of decades, yeah? So she's done this loop a few times, so her knowledge, her understanding of the concepts involved and the structure of it is pretty detailed at this point. Like, she's had to present it multiple times, she's had to refine it multiple times. So when she thinks, she's already thinking in a structure around this. So when somebody says talk on vulnerability, she can then go, great, okay, so all these things then line up in her head. She's got a destination in mind. Her brain's already starting to think of the journey of the way there. She just needs to fit it into a time frame. Yeah? So the ultimate amazing world-class speakers, and even the intuitive channels that you see who are doing it really well, because again, they're getting out of the way, but they're channeling something, but they're all structured, right? And what their message is that comes through, it's always systematic. Esther Hicks, for example, channeling Abraham, she has a whole system. There's a whole system that they work in together. So the ultimate final phase is the phase where it's integrated. It's all integrated in together. The left brain, the right brain bits have all come in together nice and neatly, and all the bits of the information, and you can communicate it in a way that's structured and makes sense for the person beholding it, as well as you in communicating it. And that's part of what makes the spontaneous sharing look really easy and look like it's being done well. Yeah? Does that kind of make sense?